Hi, everybody. How you doing today? You holding in there? Sticking around? Still in for the revolution? I'm here for the tech? I hope so. Stick around and survive. It's the only way to win. We're going to talk about a few headlines, a few items of conversation in the broader cryptocurrency space, and especially Bitcoin, always especially Bitcoin. It's not just the leader by market cap, it's the leader by virtually every metric. Bitcoin is better money. Let's switch over. Before we dive into all of that, I want to do a fun game. You all have seen DALL-E. This is the AI artist that can paint a picture for you based on a text input that you give it. Well, somebody spun up a DALL-E Mini, and that has now been converted into this service called Crayon, C-R-A-I-W-O-N. You put in a text prompt. A couple minutes later, it spits out some images based on what you described. I want to try this. Can you, down in the comments, give me a prompt? I'm going to start one right now just to get us going. But if you have a Bitcoin-themed prompt that our AI overlords can create a picture out of, let me know in the comments. I'd be very curious to see it. Why don't I start with, I just saw the last couple Marvel movies. I saw Thor and I saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So why don't we do Doctor Strange, Bitcoin, Hardliner, Sorcerer. Sure. Yeah, let's give that a shot. We will just leave that to do its thing and we will move on to other matters. Moving on. We are down. Obviously, the price is down. Did I even talk about the price? We're at $20,551 for Bitcoin. Ethereum is at $1,186. And my favorite microcap token is up. Giddy is up 3.4%. It is at 5.87 cents. I say it's up. It's kind of a depressing number because that was in the 30s range when I bought a fair amount. I don't have regrets. That investment allowed me to, it produced giddy rewards that I then used to unlock my funds that were locked up in collateralized loans on Celsius and Voyager and these other services that I am so glad I got out of in time. We're going to talk about those in just a bit, as you may have guessed from the title and thumbnail of this video. Brief history of Bitcoin crashes and bear markets from 2009 to 2012. I looked over this article from Cointelegraph. This is a very superficial, high-level overview because the reality is there have been numerous crashes. When I got into Bitcoin in 2013, it was already very, very evident that Bitcoin was unkillable. Even back in 2013, it seemed unkillable to me. The price kept crashing and then recovering, and then crashing and then recovering. And the trend was clear. It was high and to the right, but it was crashing and recovering and crashing and recovering and steadily climbing over time, months and years. So a couple years after learning about it in 2013, I'd learned about it probably in 2010, 2011. In 2013, I actually started to get involved because that pattern was obvious to me. If you'd actually been watching, nobody could kill it. Price just kept recovering. That's also very evident now, and it keeps playing out. Bear market number one. Again, this is very abbreviated. There were bear markets before this, though the market itself was very small. Bitcoin crashes from $32 to 1 cent in 2011. You could be forgiven at that point for thinking that Bitcoin was actually dead. To go from $30 to 1 cent on a very small market cap asset, that was, let's be real, this was still a totally experimental, weird, funny money on the internet. It would be reasonable to think that that was a death knell for Bitcoin. It was not. I'd been watching it, I was aware of it, and I was keen to see how it would behave after such harsh crashes. Bear market number two. Bitcoin tanks from $1,000 to below $200 in 2015. Now these numbers, I have issue with these numbers. It went up higher than that. It went up to about 1,200, and it did go below 200. I started my journey with Bitcoin in the summer of 2013, and I saw it from the time that I bought just go parabolic from, about $100 up to $1,200 and then crash sharply. There's that parabolic movement right there on the left. And then it crashed and crashed again and kept crashing over the next, 2 years. It was a slow crash, kind of similar to what we're experiencing now. It didn't drop off all at once. This rose sharply and then steadily scissored its way down. And then bear market number 3, Bitcoin plunges below 3,200 after hitting 20,000 in December 2017. In November 2017, I was at DevCon 2017 in Cancun, Mexico, and I remember it being just a euphoric experience to be there when the market was rallying. We were hitting new all-time highs all the time. It was very fun. It was very exciting. A lot of enthusiasm in the space. Enjoy the party while it's happening, guys. It doesn't last forever, as you may well understand at this point. But this did another kind of crash and then slow crash over the next year and a half. We can see that high in January of 2018, then it crashes and it fails to recover the new highs and just continues to go steadily lower. And then at the end of 2018, it drops even further and stays low into 2019, where we see some rally, but it's quite a while before we see new all-time highs again in 2020. Bear market number 4, BTC slumps from 63,000 to 29,000 in 2021. This is what we've all just experienced. This was the first big rally and then slump off, and then it did it again. Bitcoin plummets from 68,000 to below 20,000 in 2022. This movement was weird. It rising up to 63,000, then going down to 29,000, then back up to 68,000, then down to 20,000. This was very weird. This broke with historical trends. All of the charts that people draw of Bitcoin, a rainbow chart or the stock to flow model, whatever it may be. The last year and a half have defied the models. It may very well be that the models are broken. That doesn't mean that we stop using models. All models are wrong. Some of them are useful, right? You have to use them within certain constraints during certain times when they actually work. It's really a question of how robust they are, and the market as of late has been weird enough that it has defied these market expectations. But let's look at Bitcoin's price compared to how much Bitcoin is actually being issued. This from Wicked Smart Bitcoin, everything over 21 million. The U.S. Consumer Price Index has surged to 9.1. Meanwhile, coincidentally, only 9.1% of the 21 million Bitcoin remain unmined. Bitcoin's absolute mathematical scarcity was the discovery of the century, and it came just in time to save us from fiat's inevitable collapse. This is an interesting coincidence. It is just that. It's just a coincidence. U.S. inflation is at 9.1%. Bitcoin's continued issuance has 9.1 Bitcoin left to issue before it reaches its ultimate cap. Now, that cap won't happen for a long time. The last Bitcoins will be minted roughly in the year 2140. We will all probably be dead, I am sad to say. Unless you're hyper healthy and you plan on living far into your hundreds. I'm probably not that lucky. I'm sure I could improve my health, but as of right now, I am not, the most fit, healthy guy there is. But look at that growth over time of the price. And then on the right here, we have that graph that shows Bitcoin being issued, being spun out. When I first got into Bitcoin, it didn't take much to mine it. You could do it on your laptop. I tried to do that. I wasn't technically capable enough to pull it off, nor was I dedicated enough to grit my teeth and get through that, right? I was far too fair weather when I started. Now, the conviction is there, but the difficulty is much, much higher. People are doing this on an industrial scale, and unless you have some kind of competitive edge, access to very cheap electricity, more than likely, you're probably not going to be able to do this. We're going to talk more about Bitcoin's energy usage in just a bit. The euro dipped below US dollar value. So the euro was briefly worth less than the US dollar, then it was worth a little bit more, and now it's kind of hovering around $1. This is historically I say unprecedented. It's been about 20 years since the US dollar has been at parity with the euro. And Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, says, "We are responsible for preserving the integrity of the monetary and payment systems in the interest of citizens. A digital euro could play a decisive and beneficial role in this endeavor, serving as a public good for the transition of our society and economy into the digital age." So she's talking about a digital euro. Make no mistake, she's talking about a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, taking everything about the blockchain that had been invented for the benefit of everybody as a decentralized ledger and flipping it on its head and turning it into a highly centralized, highly controlled monetary system where a central bank would have more control over you and how you spend your money, where you spend your money, how much money you have access to, and when you don't have access to it. This is a terrible idea. This is a Black Mirror nightmare episode. But she's not the only one talking about this. All central banks are talking about this. Christine Lagarde is talking about this. Jerome Powell recently alluded to this, not so subtly. Digital currencies run by central banks. You should resist this. You should run away from this. There is no benefit to citizenry with this. None. This is turning money into government-controlled coupons that you can use at their discretion, when and where and in the ways that they want you to. Did you leave a certain economic zone? Did you walk to another neighborhood? Did you want to spend that on something that the government doesn't want you to? They could just deny the transaction. This is a terrible idea. Truly, truly, it is a Black Mirror episode. James Lavish, reformed hedge fund manager and ex-Yale hockey BTC guy, says, "I have one word for Europeans: Bitcoin. Save yourself." He's not wrong. The central authorities are going to continue to centralize even harder. What are they going to do? They're going to double down. They're going to white-knuckle grip their centralized control. It's the only thing they know how to do, right? They can't disintermediate themselves. They can't disrupt their own power. People don't do that. It's not in their incentive to do that. It's not in their benefit to do that. People who are brought up in these institutions, who've upheld these institutions, who've been employed and nourished by these institutions, where the system has worked well for them, they're not going to look at the broader ecosystem and say, maybe this institution that has worked well for me is actually bad for everybody at large. If they do begin to think that, and they do begin to indicate that to any of their peers, they will lose their position immediately. You don't rise to the top of these centralized banks if you have any sympathies for decentralized networks like Bitcoin. So it's up to people. It's up to individuals. It's up to the network itself. I have one word for you, Europeans: Bitcoin. Same for Americans. I have one word for you, Americans: Bitcoin. Save yourselves. Jeffrey Tucker. If you're not familiar with Jeffrey Tucker, he's a very fascinating character. He is the president of the Brownstone Institute. Jeffrey Tucker was a primary interview in the documentary I made about Bitcoin in 2013. He was one of the talking heads that we spoke with back then. Really fascinating dude. And he's always wearing this suit and tie and his bow tie and his academic glasses. Iconic look, Jeffrey. Back to his tweet. He says, "It's very expensive to get stuff from here to there these days," and posts a graph from the Federal Reserve indicating how much it costs to move things around by freight trucking, by truck transportation, by deep sea freight, and all commodities together. Look at that. It's getting very expensive to move things from here to there. There are lots of reasons to do this, but here's another one. Buy local if you can. I know that's not always possible. I certainly don't buy local all the time. I bought some things on Amazon Prime Day just recently, but I also go to my local farmer's market if I can. And in fact, I probably should be asking them if they'll take Bitcoin at the farmer's market. That's another thing we did in our documentary film. And as it turned out, it's rather fruitful at educating people, because somebody at the farmer's market, they run that business, right? They're the proprietor, and they can make it the decision about whether or not to accept a new form of payment. If you go into a gas station, the person working there is just a low-salary employee. They don't have any decision-making power. They can't say yay or nay. They're going to roll their eyes and say, "What do you want, man? Why are you doing this to me? Get out of my store." Because it's not really their store. They're not paid to think. They're paid to just make sure that the till keeps operating. But the farmer at the farmer's market or somebody else selling handmade goods at a farmer's market, they own their business and they can make those decisions about accepting new forms of payment. You'll probably have a lot more success with that than I did in 2013 when I was peddling this to people at farmers markets. If you do that, let me know how it goes. Maybe I should do a follow-up video, 9 years on from when we did this in 2013. Not a bad idea. I'll post it on the channel if I do it. From Bitcoin Magazine, breaking: Celsius files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This happened yesterday afternoon. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Not terribly surprised to see this. Everybody was speculating that Celsius was gearing up for an official bankruptcy. They did release a video on their YouTube channel, the Celsius YouTube channel, explaining how this was a good thing for depositors. This would help them get their affairs and their assets in order so they could take care of their customers. As always, Celsius has the right rhetoric. They say the right things. Alex Mashinsky was very persuasive in that regard. But the reality is Chapter 11 bankruptcy is not good for your depositors. It's not. It's maybe the best choice to make at this point, but good grief. Rewind the clock a few months. Nobody would say that Chapter 11 bankruptcy was a good development. Here's Mashinsky himself at, he addresses the audience during the last days of the Web Summit 2021 in Lisbon. He was at the Bitcoin conference in Miami in April. I saw him at the Celsius booth. I decided not to get my picture with the guy. That seems real, I don't know, dumb. I'm not somebody who wants to chase celebrity pictures, certainly not niche celebrities like Alex Mashinsky. But maybe I should have. Maybe that would have been an interesting time to get a selfie with Mashinsky. Celsius filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy is not surprising. What is surprising is being able to buy Bitcoin below $100,000 in 2022. Totally agreed, Dennis Porter. I totally agree. Why? Well, because you can get Bitcoin today for the same price as 2017. Before there was fully functional Lightning Network, public companies buying Bitcoin, 10 times the hash rate, clear block size consensus, legal tender in 2 countries, and global ETF products. It's way less risky today, right? The infrastructure, the development, way, way, way more developed than it was in 2017 when this was the last time we saw this price, right? The rally of 2017, 2018. So we may not be at the absolute bottom, but as I say in almost all of these streams lately, now is a good time to buy. Stack sats if you can. Is it going to be going lower? I mean, maybe. It fluctuates every day, every minute, really. Just keep buying. Just keep buying. If we're not at the absolute bottom, we are near the absolute bottom. And in fact, there is some indication. Let me pull it up. I'm going to go to Twitter and I'm going to search Pi Bitcoin because there it is, Pi cycle. I don't know what the Pi cycle is, but I have seen a lot of technical analysts talking about this. The Pi cycle bottom indicator has just marked a possible bottom for BTC. This is the 3rd time in history of Bitcoin. In 2015 and 2018, this indicator was on point. It happened, as it does now, after an ABC correction. So, again, I'm not a technical analyst, not in any meaningful sense, but I'm seeing a lot of people saying that the Pi cycle indicator has come in. I believe this is where the 200-week moving average crosses the 200-week exponential. I take it back. I don't really know what it is. It's the green line and the red line. They cross, and that seems to indicate the absolute bottom. Right there. Pi cycle low right there. And we just did it again, right? If history repeats itself, which there's no guarantee of, but it seems like a good chance that that'll happen, then we are at the actual bottom, like the real absolute bottom. No guarantees, but it's certainly possible, and seems like there's a good argument for that. Okay, moving back. From Jeff Rose, founder and CEO of Vailshire Capital, I'm a serious fan of Bitcoin and am generally embarrassed about crypto, which is essentially just fiat economics awkwardly glued to a blockchain. I feel exactly the same way. So the question is, does Jeff Rose and do I qualify as a Bitcoin hardliner, right? I'm a serious fan of Bitcoin, and I'm generally embarrassed about crypto. Most of the stuff out there isn't going to work. A lot of the stuff out there is an outright in the open scam. Almost all of it will go to zero in the not distant future. So, do I think all of it, 100%? Right? If there are 20,000 cryptocurrencies, do I really believe that 19,999 of them are going to go to zero and Bitcoin alone will remain? No, I don't actually think that. I think Bitcoin will, maybe a handful of others will find niche uses and utility. And I also have this question for the hardliners. Is it possible? Are there examples of interesting, useful technology being developed on other chains and being brought over to become part of the Bitcoin blockchain? Are there bits of code that began on other chains that are now part of Bitcoin's code? I don't know the answer to that. But if the answer is yes, then that basically does away with the hardline position, right? If you're saying that all of these other cryptocurrencies accomplish nothing, well, friend, if you're saying Bitcoin is the only one that has any utility and any of these others helped contribute to the code base for Bitcoin, then they do have some utility. They're testing grounds. They're competition. It's a marketplace to experiment with all of these different ideas and technologies. Competition is what you want. Actual free markets is what you want. So to try to shut other things down just because you don't like them, go ahead and dislike them all day long. Say that they're not going to succeed and people should not invest in them. But to try to denigrate anybody who does and say that it's stupid and anybody who believes in them is stupid, well, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. Dennis Porter again, there is an incredible amount of high-end Bitcoin documentaries in production. Most will launch near the next halvening as BTC pumps. Bullish AF. For the sake of the filmmakers, I hope they do launch as BTC pumps, because I'll tell you what, I finished my documentary in the midst of a down market when people were not excited about it. That's actually not true. I finished production as it was ramping up at the end of 2013, and we had a ton of media interest. I had people contacting me from all over the globe. I went to London and did interviews there. I went to New York and did interviews there. But I went to San Francisco and did interviews there. But when we actually finished filming, or finished producing, editing the documentary, and it was done, like roll credits, we are finished, the market was down and nobody was interested. And it was darn near impossible to get real distribution. I should revisit that issue. It is now streaming in a number of different, I would say, second-tier streaming services. It's not Netflix, it's not Hulu, but you can get it on Amazon and a whole bunch of others. If you have any inroads to get it on Netflix or Hulu or anything like that, let me know. Would love to chat. It's a historical document that has an interesting place in Bitcoin's development. I think it really holds up, but the prices are kind of shocking because when we began filming, it was at about $100. From Unhosted Walker. He looks like a Bitcoin hardliner. Bitcoin and orange are all over his bio. He says, if you find yourself in discussion with a Bitcoin fudder, especially the smarter-than-thou PhD types, ask them if they've personally used Bitcoin. The answer will be no, and this is not a coincidence. This is absolutely true. This is totally true. The people who say that Bitcoin is dumb, it's worthless, it doesn't work, they've never used it. They've never touched it. They've decided beforehand that they don't like it and that it has no utility. First of all, the incredible privilege being displayed here that they think it has no utility. I've seen it said that outside of North America, the use case for Bitcoin is obvious for anyone outside of North America. Countries that have seen, in living memory, they've seen their currency collapse. Go to South America, go to Europe. Currencies have collapsed in living memory. People know that things get manipulated by centralized bodies. The Bitcoin use case is clear to people there. But especially the PhD types, the smarter-than-thou PhD types, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to me how much somebody can educate themselves out of a good idea, right? I hate to say overeducated, but man, oh man, I am tempted to use that phrase. From Ian Rand McKenzie, Crayon Prompt, Bitcoin Steampunk Moon Colony. I hear you, sir. Let's go back to that tab and see if we can put it in here. Too much traffic. Oh, That's frustrating. I didn't get the Doctor Strange image. Okay, Bitcoin, steampunk, moon colony. I love it. Okay, I hope this doesn't time out like the last one did. It appears to be going, right? 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, it's not going to time out. It would have given me a "we're too busy" sign by now. We're 15 seconds in. All right, I'm going to come back to that tab later. We'll see what it produces. Moving on, Daniel Batten, who we have cited on this live stream before, not this one, but prior live streams. He's a climate tech investor and Bitcoin ESG analyst. When subjected to investor due diligence, the myths about Bitcoin mining peel away very fast. It stands out as one of the best technologies I've seen in the last 20 years for urgently addressing climate change. Excuse me. And he said, I see about 25 new climate technologies per year. I've been investing in tech since 2000. So this guy knows. He has a clear perspective. I think this is one of the most important areas for adoption, right? This minimizes the attack surface for people to come after Bitcoin proper, Bitcoin itself. If you can demonstrate very clearly both the narrative and the reality that Bitcoin is good for the climate, good for the energy grid, then there's basically nothing left for people to attack. What are they going to come after? What are they going to say? Like, this undermines the central bank. No apologies there. You don't have to apologize for chanting "end the Fed." That's becoming a more and more popular idea all the time. The climate impact, though, is one that people are going to keep coming at until we strengthen the narrative and the reality that Bitcoin is good for the environment. This is his site, Daniel Batten. Bitcoin mining can prevent climate change. I need to dive into this. This is an area that I think is fascinating and very important, so I will dive into that later. But speaking of mining, not that many people do home mining anymore, certainly not of Bitcoin proper. They're probably doing other cryptocurrencies. But I love the creativity on display when people do stuff like this. This person is drying out mushrooms against their mining rig as the fan runs. There are also plenty of home miners that you can see that people use it to heat their home or to heat a greenhouse. I love that. Love it, love it. Never tire of seeing those pictures. Speaking of mining, sustainable Bitcoin miner CleanSpark purchases over 1,000 mining rigs. There's been a lot of concern about miners in the midst of this down market, that they aren't going to be able to pay their bills. But so far, I believe miners have learned their lessons from prior market cycles, and they've prepared for what's happening right now. The price could stay down for a while, and hopefully miners can sustain their positions, sustain their operations, because that's important to the network, but also just important that people be able to keep their business open. If any Bitcoin holders who were customers of Celsius or Voyager and have no access to their coins want to share their story with hard money with Nat Brunell, please DM. We're working on a crypto contagion report. I might reach out to them and talk to them. I did not have a ton locked up. I did have about 2,400 USD coin still on Celsius, literally because I forgot it was there. And I got about $5 on Voyager. Too bad. I have written those off. I plan on never seeing them again. But if you have a story to share, go ahead and tell Nat Brunell via DM. Hard Money with Nat Brunell is a new Bitcoin news show. Nat Brunell is a conventional finance news person who has pivoted into the space and has done very well for herself. Bravo, Nat. After being in the space for like a year, 2 years, she's on the main stage at Bitcoin in Miami in 2022. I'm low-key a little bitter about that, but I won't begrudge other people their successes. RoboSats, this from Bitcoin Magazine. I have not read this yet, but I am very curious. RoboSats, exchanging Bitcoin easily, privately, and KYC free. If that's true, that's the holy grail, right? To be able to KYC free, get Bitcoin, exchange Bitcoin. So I'm going to dig into this in a bit and learn more about RoboSats. And if you're curious on the topic, I would advise the same. Lightning Network also offers a way for people to move Bitcoin around in a much more anonymous fashion. If there is some, shall we say, what's the term I'm looking for? Analysis that can be done. shoot, there's a word. I can't think of the word. If there's analysis that can be done on the Lightning Network to find private information, those techniques have not been thoroughly developed yet, right? Chain analysis is very thoroughly developed. There are whole firms dedicated to that, and that has developed quite extensively. But I don't think that exists fully on the Lightning Network yet. So if you're on the Lightning Network, you can move stuff around in a more or less anonymous fashion. OpenSea is laying off about 20% of its staff. The only thing that's surprising here to me is that this didn't happen with more of their staff, and it didn't happen sooner. Maybe it has. Maybe they've already been laying people off, but NFTs are down so hard. 90+% from their all-time high. OpenSea will probably go the way of Coinbase in that they continue to grow. They become, the market leader in the NFT space, but it's going to take NFTs surging back with monetary value for them to actually succeed. We will see if that happens, or if something like Fractal from Justin, what's his name? Founder of Twitch. Sorry, guys, I can't remember people's names. Founder of Twitch. Justin Kahn. Justin Kahn founded an NFT marketplace called Fractal. Fractal is focused on the gaming space. This is an area that I am bullish on. NFTs in the metaverse, in games, makes perfect sense. And I see Fractal being this... Fractal selling NFTs in the metaverse is like Amazon selling books in the early internet. If they can pull it off and succeed and create a profitable business and grow, they will eventually be the NFT for everything marketplace. Because if the metaverse really is the future of the internet 4.0, then gaming NFTs are going to be all NFTs, or at least a great portion, a great majority of them. All right, those are my 2 cents on NFTs, OpenSea, Fractal, Justin Kahn. Ethereum's shadow. Oh, I hate these ads. Go away. Ethereum's shadow fork goes live in lead up to the merge. Developers are focused on testing recent updates and the releases used in the previous Sepolia hard fork, but on a more intensive network. We supposedly keep getting closer and closer to the merge. I remain dubious. This is the kind of thing that has been pushed back for literally years. Not hyperbole. It's been pushed back for no fewer than 5 years. So, will it actually happen later this year? We will see. From Ian Rand McKenzie, OpenSea is very unfriendly toward devs in my experience. Not sure if that will play out well for them. Yeah, it seems like devs would be your best friend, right? You would want to work with devs. You would want to have good APIs, good documentation. They're still a startup. They're a highly funded, high-growth startup in a bear market for their category. They probably have fires going everywhere, and they're just deciding which ones they actually have capacity to put out. I'm sure OpenSea is not doing great right now. They're just trying to survive. So that doesn't surprise me that they're not very friendly to devs. They probably don't have the capacity to roll out the red carpet and really take care of devs the way that they should. They just can't. Giddy, my favorite microcap token, Giddy, is putting this call out for people to get paid to beta test the Giddy app. 1,000 Giddy tokens. Right now, a Giddy token is worth 5 cents. So what is that? $50 that they would give to you? Is that right? I think that's right. I'm on their beta list. In fact, I will put my affiliate link in the comments or down in the description after this stream. If you want to download their app and sign up via my link, I will get moved up the list. I don't know why they're asking for beta testers when I'm signed up and pretty close to the top on their list. I would love to beta test you guys. I volunteer as tribute. I don't know what they're looking for, what qualifies somebody to be a beta tester, but I would be eager to dive in there. I'll fill out my application here via their link. I thought this was funny. And this was the title and thumbnail for my live stream today. BlockFi CEO doesn't want to be compared to Voyager and Celsius. My guy, get real. Zach Prince, the CEO of BlockFi, says, "We're different." A few days after BlockFi's warrants were downgraded to worthless, Zach Prince took to Twitter to ask that his company not be compared to peers. My guy, you are in the exact same business. You have the exact same business model. Maybe you ran your playbook a little bit better than Celsius or others or Voyager, but let's face it, my friend, your two main competitors have gone belly up. And it's not like you weren't impacted by that. BlockFi was absolutely exposed to the Three Arrows Capital going belly up. They margin called Three Arrows Capital. BlockFi had the good sense to take collateral in their loan to Three Arrows Capital. Voyager didn't, for whatever reason. Who on earth thought that that was a good idea? An unsecured loan. I guess they thought 3AC was good for it. BlockFi is also doing the exact same business model. What specifically am I talking about? Rehypothecation. If you're not familiar with this word, it's worth getting to know, especially useful in the last couple months. Why? Because rehypothecation is a practice whereby banks and brokers use for their own purposes assets that have been posted as collateral by their clients. So, in plain English, I deposit with somebody like Celsius or Voyager or BlockFi. They then take my deposit and they use it as collateral for their own financial activity. They want to borrow from somebody. Oh, can we get a loan? Here, you can have this depositor collateral as your collateral. This is what caused the entire cascading contagion. BlockFi participated in this exact same business practice. And when I learned about rehypothecation, heck of a word, rehypothecation, a couple years ago, it sounded very academic. It sounded very theoretical, right? Just the word itself, rehypothecation. Well, is that really going to be a problem? I mean, as long as the gears keep turning, it should be fine. Yeah, the problem with rehypothecation is that if any one of those gears stops moving for any reason, then everybody down the line is screwed. That's exactly what has happened here. It's why Voyager is out of business. It's why Celsius is out of business. It's why BlockFi is in question, right? It was being rumored that they were going to be purchased for a few $1 million, down 99% from their $4 billion valuation, multi-billion-dollar valuation. Zach Prince has said that that's not happening, but what I think he means is that they won't be acquired for that specific number, right? If he got an acquisition offer, he'd probably take it, right, given the right terms. Moving on. Yeah, as I said, they were absolutely impacted by the Three Arrows Capital liquidation. The crypto lender BlockFi was one of the companies that was involved in the liquidation of venture firm Three Arrows Capital, according to recent developments. A few days ago, reports started circulating that $400 million had been liquidated from the venture firm by its lenders, and that the firm was facing liquidity issues. But BlockFi had collateral, so they liquidated that collateral. I'm still reading The Network State by Balaji Srinivasan. It is a very good book. Notably, it is not an easy read. His style is interesting. It reads like a dense textbook and not a 101 textbook necessarily. This is more like a 202, 303 level course. There's a lot of kind of prior knowledge that's very helpful, if not necessary. And to Balaji Srinivasan's credit, the book is packed with links that he makes explicit call out to in the Kindle edition. The Kindle edition, by the way, is the only version that's available right now. I imagine the print version and the audiobook version will have to be edited quite a bit because the text calls out the links in the Kindle edition. So he makes reference to different historical events, different current events, different ideas and theories, and links to those, and says in the text of the book, click on that link. It's going to be important. You need to understand this before you'll understand this next thing I'm going to talk about. If you've read books like anything that Michael Pollan has written, Michael Pollan famous for The Omnivore's Dilemma, or more recently, How to Change Your Mind. The Omnivore's Dilemma, looking at how we eat, what we eat, how the modern diet evolved, and what it means for us. More recently, he wrote the book How to Change Your Mind, about psychedelics and how we came to where we are in society with our relationship to psychedelics, how that could be a mistake, and what the psychedelics are actually like in practice and use. Michael Pollan does an excellent job, and it's kind of its own genre. He does an excellent job of taking these topics with rich history and boiling them down to their essence and communicating them in a narrative style that it's very easy to read and digest and understand. Balaji Srinivasan has not done that in this book, but I think the topic would benefit tremendously from somebody doing that, right? Taking these ideas and reducing them to a much more palatable, understandable 101 level introduction. I'm familiar with his ideas. I've been following him for at least a couple of years. I'm fascinated by the concept here of developing a new state, a new nation. Slightly different things. He talks about that. What is a state? What is a nation? They're not the same. Regardless, I think this is an incredibly important topic, so much so that I would love to see it simplified even further so that normal people can get on board and not weirdos like me who obsess over big ideas like this. I think I'm kind of an anomaly in that regard. Moving on, we started with AI drawing. We're going to end with some AI drawing. This is on r/Bitcoin. I asked an AI to draw the founder of Bitcoin. What do you think, guys? Is that what Satoshi Nakamoto looks like? I'm sure they didn't use the word Satoshi Nakamoto. It would not have produced this image. But if you said the founder of Bitcoin, this seems about right. Oh, and also in the network state, he talks about AI and the impacts that AI will have on society. I made a half-hearted attempt to launch my own YouTube channel a couple of years ago, mid-first wave pandemic. And one of the things that I talked about was these AIs and how that I think they're going to be as impactful on the world as Bitcoin has been, right? And I think Bitcoin is huge. Bitcoin is and will continue to change the world. The developments that are happening in AI right now, I think, are going to spawn new religions, right? This is going to be something that you can ask for answers to incredibly complex questions. What should I do? How should I behave? Do you want to speak to a dead ancestor? Do you want to speak to Socrates or Steve Jobs? Guess what? These AIs can synthesize all of the writing and words and records from these past historical characters and spin up a de facto digitized version of them with whom you could interact with. The combination of GPT-3 and DALL-E and deepfakes. You could have a digital version of virtually anybody who has a rich digital footprint. You could have a digital version of them that you could interact with in real time. If this isn't godlike technology, then I don't know what is. It is my suspicion that we will see, if not proper religions proper, we will see pseudo-religions spawning around AI technology in our lifetime. That's my big crazy idea for the day. All right, moving on. We already talked about that chart. Let's go back to our initial prompt. Whoa! Bitcoin, steampunk, moon colony. Holy cow, I love it. I love it. This was a great prompt. Thank you, Ian Rand McKenzie. Rad. MR Lieberman is saying, why can't we see your subscriber count? I don't know. That's not something that I have hidden, not deliberately in any way. Oh man, these are rad. One fun thing that I have seen with these AI, like DALL-E algorithms, is that there's a lot of fear that these will replace artists. It's my suspicion that artists will be able to use these, right? If you need inspiration, if you need iteration, if you need things to play around with, this is a great way to get started. It would be very easy to take one of these and to fine tune it, to use it as a template, to use it as a starting point. I think that's where DALL-E is useful right now. But it's also just incredibly novel and fun to play around with. Thank you, Ian Rand McKenzie. That was an excellent prompt. Maybe we should do this more in the future. From Ian Rand McKenzie, my business is sick. Better go to the rehypothecary. Clever. This guy. All right, team. I'm going to call it there. It's been fun. What do you want to talk about in the future? I need to get back to the scripted videos. They take a lot of time. I just got to focus. I struggle. If you can't tell, I struggle with focusing. But do you believe in me? I can do it. I've done it before. We're going to get back to the scripted videos and do more produced stuff. All right, team.